Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Baby Einstein, Atari, many more, how they overcome big challenges in life and business. This is part of the Skubana e-commerce mastery series, where top sellers and experts teach you what really works to boost your e-commerce business. Wes is nodding because he is one of these experts, so he's going to talk to us today, and founder of Ezonomy. Skubana is a software platform to manage your entire e-commerce operation. Today, we have Wes Grudzien. I've been practicing your name for a few days now. He's co-founder of Lullaby Lane. Wes helped grow the company's Amazon sales to over $7 million annually in less than 3 years. That's amazing, Wes. And he's also founder of Ezonomy, where he teaches the exact methods used to grow the seven-figure business and consults with large-scale sellers. Wes, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat. And, you're like the most lovable person. And we'll get into some of your fun facts. Like, you have some crazy fun facts about you, which we'll talk about, but I want to get into a few of I just said some mind-blowing things for some people, for myself, growing to $7 million annually in less than 3 years. So I have to start with that. And so what do you think has created some of the biggest leaps in the huge jump in revenue in just 3 years?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So I think our ability to grow was directly impacted by our access to inventory. Mm-hmm. And so with Amazon, a lot of times you have three major ways you can basically sell on Amazon. Retail arbitrage, which is literally going out to a store, buying something on clearance and selling it. You have private labeling, which is contracting with companies in China to design products for yourself. And then you have companies like us that contract directly with branded manufacturers, and sell those products. And so the beautiful part about that is that the products that we sell, we don't really have to create too much of a demand for them, right? Because the demand is already there. Right. All we have to do is be very good at putting those products in front of the customer's eyes, because that's what they want. That's what they're searching for. So that's, that is definitely the number one reason why we've been able to scale to the size that we have in the time that we have.
Yeah. I mean, with the branded and, component, there's people out there who are also selling these brands and they're not as successful as you. So what separates what you're doing from them? Sure.
It's a great question. Interestingly enough, I would say one of the major reasons is we actually just put traditional business practices in place. And I know it sounds maybe simple, but a lot of times you can get lost in the just volume and the hype and the excitement that maybe you don't put those traditional practices in place. So we have budgets that we work from. We have buying cycles. We have inventory reconciliation. It's all the parts of a traditional business, maybe not through Amazon, that I think make a great difference.
Yeah, it's the non-sexy stuff that actually works.
Exactly. It's the foundational principles on which any business is based. You can't get away from those pretty much no matter where you are or whatever you do or where you sell.
Yeah. So Wes, speak to one of those, because what is one of those foundational principles that most people get wrong or they aren't doing?
No, that's a great point. Probably our number one, I would say, is creating an area of focus. And this is particularly for Amazon, in that, if you sell everything on Amazon, that's fine. And there's some people that do that and have that business model. But we believe that if you sell everything, you're not really an expert at anything. So by focusing in the category that we did, which is baby, we build relationships with manufacturers, we build relationships with our distributors, with our transportation companies. We're able to understand the market and not just go on Amazon and see, what's a good selling product and sell that. We're able to look at that and create an opportunity that is not currently on Amazon by having that information. And we do that because we know the market, we know what people are looking for, and it's proactive instead of reactive, basically.
Right. So how did you, we're going to go in more detail later, but I have to ask, how did you even get into babies,
Well, we have a prior. There's four partners in our company,
Yeah.
and we have another small business that we originally started, which was direct e-commerce, only e-commerce, basically drop shipping, and we're pretty successful at that. But the problem is there was a real market cap. It was mostly small niche medical supplies.
Mm.
Right around that same time, we were looking for new avenues, new areas of growth, and it's a classic story in our industry. But my partner, him and his wife, got pregnant, so they started looking at strollers
Right.
and realized she wanted this $700 stroller that they had to drive an hour and a half to even just go look at. So
Right.
we're like, huh. Did a little research on the market and realized there's a nice opportunity there, kind of for that niche. That's definitely how we got into it.
Was the foundation early on working with in your dad's business too? I mean, we won't talk about that now, but was that okay? So we'll talk about like what your dad's business was and some of the things you did with that. So we talked about some of the big leaps. So it's putting those foundational principles. So what's another one? So you said you mentioned a bunch. What's another important one that most people miss or don't do?
Sure. I say planning out, not only financially, so looking at your cash flow, looking at profitability, but also planning new products. Because the other thing about Amazon is that it's almost like the stock market in that there's ups and downs, dramatic shifts. You gain new products, you lose products. So you always have to have products waiting in the wings and manufacturers waiting in the wings that you might not be actively pursuing, but building that foundational relationship. So when the time comes when maybe you lose the ability to sell a certain brand or line for whatever reason, that new company is there, and you just start selling that. So you always have products waiting in the wings for
So you always have like a pipeline of new things that you're looking at. What's your method for, like you said, they're very capital intensive, especially looking on your site like Lullaby Lane. Strollers are not like a $30 product. I mean, they're hundreds of dollars. So what's your method for deciding, okay, this is even deserves to be in my pipeline for new product, and then getting to that point where you decide to release it?
Sure. Well, like you mentioned with our direct website, Lullaby Lane, one of our philosophies is we only sell really high quality baby products, and so we identify that, and then the other part of it is that buying directly from manufacturers and being of value to them within the industry allows you to have terms, so you can negotiate credit terms. And you really leverage those credit terms to build the business. That's one of the other areas we really focus on, is increasing our credit terms with our manufacturers, because that directly correlates. The more credit you have, the more product you can buy, the more product you can sell, the more money, and it's just a virtuous cycle.
Yeah, that's a really important point. So what about new products? Like when you vet new products, because I'm thinking, okay, there's only so many strollers out there or baby bowlers or whatever, but you're constantly coming up with new products. Where do you start in your thought process of coming up with those new product ideas?
Sure. Well, being in, one category, the baby category, we have 2 major trade shows a year. So we spend a lot of time at the trade shows, talking to people, working with our manufacturers' representatives, identifying upcoming brands, upcoming products. And we try to get it in here and really, use it. We have moms in the store that work in the store. We have moms that work in the, in the office and the warehouses here. So, personally vetting the product and trying to also look at that product's placement within the market. So is it a niche? Is it a me too? Is it really just trying to understand not just on Amazon, but what's the dynamic of that specific product?
Yeah, no, I like what you mentioned about the trade shows, because you probably get a lot of different ideas. And can you tell me about the last trade show or one of the trade shows that you were like, wow, like you saw something, it just stuck out to you that you probably would have never figured out if you hadn't gone to a trade show?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that with the baby show, which ABC Baby is ABC Home or Baby and Kids show. It's in Las Vegas, the fall show every year. There was it was a couple years ago, but there's a company called Four Moms, and they are a newer company. They have a stroller that you push a button and it automatically folds for you, and then you press the button automatically unfolds. I was like, man, that is, that's just crazy. So it's
I love it.
Bluetooth enabled. It's iPhone hookup. Has lights on it. Has everything.
All the bells and whistles.
You got
Oh,
it.
that's cool. And so, what other mistakes do you see? I mean, obviously, with Ezonomy, you're doing a lot of consulting. What are other people doing that is working really well? That when you're talking to them, and then on the flip side, what do you tell them as far as directing them away from certain mistakes that they may be making?
Sure, sure. Well, it's very popular right now, particularly through the Amazon, to create private label products. And
Yeah.
so with, Alibaba coming up, it's very, very simple, relatively speaking, process of identifying a product, buying it from China, listing it, and putting it on Amazon.
Yeah.
The upside is that there are so many niches that there's still a market out there to be pretty successful.
Right.
One of the things that I've seen that folks have been doing that it may not be the best is they are shipping the product directly to Amazon's fulfillment centers without testing it and without getting their hands on it. And
Right.
that sounds good. And in practice, it saves you shipping costs and whatnot. But again, going back to those traditional business principles and
Right.
practices, you want to make sure you put quality assurance checks in place.
Right.
And if you don't, and the manufacturer sends a poorly produced product, and you get a ton of negative reviews on these products, you're really going to be risking the health of your account.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, do you suggest people send a small sample size of them first and then Amazon, or should they send the whole shipment to themselves? What do you suggest?
Sure, there's a couple different ways you can do it depending on your business. I mean, the simplest way probably is to work with your manufacturer and have them send a sample of that exact lot of product that's been produced to you first, and then when you greenlight it, then they send directly to Amazon's fulfillment centers. The safest way, which is what we would do, we don't do private label, but if we did, we would have it shipped all directly to our warehouse. Because even if they put just the wrong sticker, all of a sudden the product's listed under the wrong listing. You have dozens, if not hundreds, of returns. It just turns into a giant mess. So yes, on the front end, it may cost you a little more in shipping, but on the back end, it's a peace of mind and a sense of security. That you're not risking something major with your business.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Quality control is huge. And then, so Wes, you bring up a really good point. I like how you separate the arbitrage to the private label, to the branded, the manufacturer. Talk about that, because people have very different opinions on. Some people are like, no, I don't want to compete with everyone else by selling the same product. I want to do private label, and then the brand is like, this is quality stuff. It's already trusted. It's already selling. So talking about the private label side, when people bring up that about, okay, well, there's, it's my brand, so I'm not competing with, other people selling the exact same thing.
Sure, that's a good point. The issue that there's positives and there's negatives of
Right.
each styles, right? So with retail arbitrage, your profitability is higher than any other area.
Really?
But
Oh, wow.
but you have depending on how deeply you search and dig for product, your per unit profitability is significantly higher. However, you have time cost associated.
It's
So
horrible.
do you want to spend 7 days a week, 5-6 hours a day hunting for product? If you do, great. That's not my avenue. So it's profit.
Right.
But it's difficult. The private labelers, that is true that you are your own brand and you're your own product. There's two issues that you run into with that. One is that you have people that jump on your listings that are maybe even the exact manufacturer in China that is producing your product, because there are programs and there are folks that do that. They literally contact these manufacturers in China and they say, hey, we can help you sell direct on Amazon for products that are already being sold.
Gotcha.
That's one issue. There's ways around that as well. The second issue is that there are courses out there which are great and they've helped folks, but they teach you the exact step-by-step process for private labeling. And so that's great for the first group and maybe the second and the third and the fourth, but you have waves of folks coming in doing this, identifying the same product. So yes, you may be the only person that has a wide-handled spatula under your brand, but there are possibly 8, 10 other listings of wide-handled spatulas that are the exact same product. They're just a different brand.
Right.
So in a sense, that's going more to that eBay model than it is to the Amazon model of all sellers on one listing.
Yeah, and so the positive side of the branded, you go in direct to manufacturers, obviously there's that credibility, there's a demand there. Any disadvantages?
Absolutely. They all, the disadvantage is that you have less control over your pricing. And so, if you're buying from a manufacturer, they, a lot of times, particularly for your, well sought after items, there is a minimum price that you're able to sell the product for.
I gotcha.
Yep, and your margins typically are thinner than if you're working private label or if you're in retail arbitrage. So you have to be of the mindset of volume. Now you still have to be profitable, but your profitability is going to be less. So there's definitely, that's the negative of that, is you have to do a lot more volume to be as profitable, but the volume is there. I'd say the benefit of that, though, is that one of the things we've done and we've leveraged is that, when we started off, we were a baby company. We were a small retailer. We had like a 1,200 square foot store. Right. Our manufacturers labeled us as a small retailer, a mom and pop shop. Okay, yeah. That is a label that you get in our industry. When you start buying tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of product a month, all of a sudden these manufacturers say, they're not really a small potato anymore.
Yeah.
So from that, we've been able to leverage better pricing, better terms, and that actually helps us on our channel outside of Amazon. So, that's definitely benefited our own website. When you have, better terms, you can get more aggressive with some of your pricing or with some of your discounts or promotions that normally you wouldn't have if you didn't have the sales volume that we had through Amazon.
Yeah. So talk about, with the branded on Amazon specifically, about the buybacks. Because, I don't know how it works. Do they let only a certain number of people sell that particular baby stroller or whatever the case is? So I imagine there's other people selling it. How do people get the buyback so that when someone's purchasing it, they're purchasing it from you?
Sure. That's a great question. So the first thing is that, every person's experience is different, but our personal experience is that we don't sell against Amazon retail for anything. So if Amazon retail sells that product, that's great. It creates awareness, but we won't sell that under that listing. We might create a bundle, or we might do an alternate product listing, or something that adds value to the customer.
So you're saying if the manufacturer sells directly to Amazon in bulk and Amazon sells it through their own channel, then you won't sell it. You won't also sell it unless it's in a bundled situation.
Right. We won't sell under that same ASIN.
Okay.
Amazon folks out there.
Got it.
And that same listing. We'll create a separate listing that adds value. And that's again one of the other kind of things that we do, or keys to the kingdom, on how to understand how to build those bundles and what makes sense.
Yeah. What else? What other factors affect the buybacks, in your opinion?
Well, like I mentioned, a lot of the products we sell are MAP pricing, or minimum advertised pricing. So basically, everyone is supposed to sell the product at the same price. So there's almost there's almost no competitive advantage if you don't deal with price, if all you're dealing with are people that do fulfillment by Amazon.
Right.
So it's somewhat of a negative, but it's also positive, because if we look at a listing on Amazon and we use a software that calculates sales volume, right, per units per month. Mm-hmm. If we know the sales volume and we know the price and we know the number of FBA sellers, we can calculate how much gross sales we're going to be doing on a monthly basis for that product without even having to sell that product.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So you can forecast what your growth is going to look like over 3 or 6 months by using that formula.
Yeah. So I feel sorry for people competing with you. You have this whole formula in place.
Well, it's software tools, and we've been doing it for a while, and I'm sure other people do it too. You kind of know the other big sellers in your area. We know there's, probably 4 or 5 other larger sellers. Right. that do similar things to we do.
Yeah, well, there's a reason they're larger sellers because they're doing these things. But so I don't know if you can share. We can have a software conversation later. But can you talk about what was that software you're talking about that does that calculation or reprice or calculates it?
Sure. Well, there's multiples that you can use. Everyone's got their own brand, but basically the software goes in and looks at the sales rank of the product, and they know from historical data how many units are sold because of that sales rank. And so we use Jungle Scout. There's AMZ Tracker. There's multiple ones out there that give you that data, and that's what's really important is getting the data as opposed to how you get it. So and the other calculation of expected volume if we were to become an FBA seller of that product is that's internal. I mean, there's nothing. It's just sales volume divided by FBA sellers.
Right. You're bringing up. You're not even letting me get to your fun facts, Wes, because you're bringing up some really good points. The other point you brought up was bundles. This is really intriguing, and I find a lot of people aren't doing these things. What do you find works for a good bundle?
No, that's a great point. It's definitely some of the stuff that I work with as a consultant. What I work with some of the companies on doing this exact thing. What you want to find is
what'd you advise someone? What did they come with? Did they have no bundles, and what did you tell them?
Yeah. I mean, as for a retail seller or a seller that contracts directly with brands, what you want to do is find a high-ranking base product. So the main product of the listing. So for example, with us, if there's a popular stroller, okay, what you want to do is identify that listing. You can tell what the sales are on that, and then identify the secondary product that goes with it. So for example, we have a stroller that is sold individually, but it has a second seat. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I saw that on your site.
Yeah.
It's like on the homepage. It's like front and center. Like I didn't even realize that was possible, and it's like shows you how you can add another one. Yeah, that's really cool. So
Amazon Retail buys that stroller and buys the second seat and sells them both, but they don't sell them together. So it's just it's in somewhat a common sense thing.
Makes sense. Yeah.
There's on the Amazon pages. There's what's called frequently bought together products.
Right.
Take a look at those. Maybe that's something.
It's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, focusing on one industry in one area allows us to do that. So we create some pretty unique bundles that aren't frequently bought together or maybe intuitive, that are pretty successful because of what we understand, how the market works. Yeah, and you have moms that you probably talk to, and they're like, oh, it makes perfect sense in your mind. So what's the most popular bundle that you've created and or that you've advised someone else to create? Sure. Well, like I mentioned early on of our conversation, you always got to have products in the pipeline. So this product, Amazon Retail, does sell now. So we don't really sell this one much anymore, but it was what I was telling you about, the stroller with the second seat, and the retail on the product was about $650. And at one point in our peak, we were running about $85,000 a month in sales on that one listing. That's amazing. So Amazon sucks. They took it over. What happened? That is the marketplace. That's part of Amazon. Listen, Amazon Retail, it's their ball, it's their court, it's their rules. Right. They're going to track what's popular for their third-party sellers. Right. And they're going to try to take it. I mean, that is horrible. That's the nature of the beast. Yeah. You got, if you complain about that, it's part of the game. It is that you just have. That's part of doing business. That's part of it. So have product lined up and ready to go when that happens. So then, how do we get them buying more on your site? Like, how does that work? Well, Amazon pretty strictly forbids driving traffic off of their site to your own website. So we don't do that. We, outside of Amazon, we do some Facebook marketing. Right. That's what I mean. Like outside of Amazon. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm really, really blessed to have the four of us total, or three very smart partners. Yeah. Each has their own strength And one of my partners is very gifted in marketing, Facebook marketing, digital marketing in general. So we've seen some pretty nice gains from that.
Yeah.
The other thing. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
The other thing that we've gotten is from our relationship with one of our manufacturers, building it through Amazon. We kind of became close. We had an opportunity when the Affordable Care Act was implemented to. What happened was it's a federal mandate for healthcare plans to provide a breast pump at no cost to moms.
Yeah.
And so that seems kind of simple, but we actually, like you were talking about with my father's company in the past, had the ability to build these healthcare providers. And so from that relationship on Amazon, we leveraged that to create a new website and a completely new business sending out breast pumps and billing these insurances. So, that in a sense, it's indirect, but a way to market to our own site. But in a sense, it's also direct because of that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit too. What I was going to ask you is your 4 partners. So what is the unique skill that everyone brings to the table?
Sure. Well, one of them is my father. And so he's just been around a long time, and he had his own business, and he's a smart guy. So, intuitional things or gut reaction things that go to him.
Yeah. So what's his superpower in your mind?
He has the ability to look out and kind of see what's going to happen quite a bit.
Because he has so much experience that he can kind of see trends easier than other people.
Yeah, so he's good for that, for sure. One of our other partners was also a very successful businessman. He bought a business, grew it from about 25 employees to 130 employees in 5 years, and ended up selling it. So he actually made an investment in our company. So he's actually an angel investor. He wasn't the original investors, but he put a sizable amount of money into our company, and that's great. But I would say even more important has just been his experience and knowledge in terms of growing a business, because that's what we're doing. Dad's company was about the same size for quite a while. This other gentleman, Tim, he did it. I mean, he took it, like I said, from small to large, and then sold his business. So he has an amazing wealth of knowledge that we've been able to tap into. And then
stop on Tim for a second, Wes. So tell me, what is your favorite or best advice you've gotten from Tim, or that you've heard him say?
That's a great question. So much in terms of the Amazon piece. Yeah. Which I thought was very, very smart. One of the things he says is control the controllables, and that's one of the things I use with my clients as well.
Talk about that. Yeah,
there's so much that you're not in control of on Amazon. Amazon does the marketing, the search engine, basically everything outside of having the product. So you're very limited in what you can control. So you have to focus on at least controlling the things that are in your power.
Yeah. So what did that mean to you? What were you like, okay, what can you control?
I mean, that's a great question. It's like before he came on, how we would buy. So how we go about buying inventory. There's many ways you can do it, but we at first were buying, 2 or 3 months worth of inventory, and then, basically sitting on this inventory. So you get almost this bullwhip effect of inventory levels. Yeah. And, that's...
I'm sure it's very common. Most people probably do that.
Absolutely. And the problem is that you can really get into cash flow issues when you do that. If you time it incorrectly and you have $1 million out in payables with your manufacturers, and some
got to sell that stuff. Yeah.
You can't pay the taxes in strollers, exactly, or pay the bills in strollers. So, going to a bi-weekly ordering pattern really helped solve a lot of those issues. So that's, just one example of where.
So is that like a tracking thing, or what was the issue with buying in bulk, like a timing thing? Like then you tracked of, okay, at this point we know the lead time when the stroller gets delivered, so we know we have to order. What was the change that you had to make so it wasn't so like up and down?
That's the weekly, just getting on a cadence of accountability. So instead of buying and then kind of not watching it for a while and saying, oh crap, I need to buy it again.
I see.
It's okay, we're going to look every 2 weeks. We're going to check this we're going to check this every day and track this, and then 2 weeks from now we're going to create a purchase order, then we're going to do this, and it's just putting again those fundamental business
I see.
basics in that allowed a lot of that success.
I see. So before it'd be like, okay, I ordered this bulk amount, I probably don't have to look at it for like a month. And then now you kind of look and you kind of see, okay, we're selling about this number a week, and you're paying really close attention of how many you need to buy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other, you risk, there's other risks that are involved when you buy 2 or 3 months worth of inventory as well. If something happens to that product listing, you may have to pull all that inventory back, and that is, those are cash monsters. Boy, those just eat up cash. So, you by ordering biweekly, you have a lot more free cash flow, so you can invest in more profitable opportunities when they come down the road.
Yeah, and that, Wes, takes discipline, right? So what do you do to employ those routines in your daily or someone else, as far as, because it's much easier to buy it, not look at it for a month, and harder to, okay, we need to check this every week or every few days. So what do you do? What systems do you put in place that make sure you actually do it or someone does it?
Sure, it's interesting that you say that. There is an incredible book called 4DX, or the 4 Disciplines of Execution. And basically it is, it talks exactly about that. If you want to, you need to identify 1 or 2 major areas of your business that you want improvement on. You need to understand the levers that would create that improvement. And then you need to create, and again, this is a very abridged version, but you need to create, there's
now none of us have to read it, Wes. Just give me, no, I'm just kidding.
So there's lag measures, which are, things that happen after you work.
Yeah.
And then there's, after you've done the work, and then there's lead measures, things that you do before, the result happens. And so you have a cadence of accountability for those lead measures. So we meet once a week talking about what those lead measures are, what they've done, what we're going to do next week. So it really just, sets a pattern and a precedence for how you go about, doing your business.
Yeah. Now, did you discover that just randomly, or did someone say you need to read this?
That was actually my partner. We're both big readers, but he came up with that one, and it really inspired him and implemented it within the company, and I've seen the big change since then.
So and I want to talk about the other partners, but any other good resources or books that you'd be like, if you are in e-commerce business, just business, but I mean obviously this is e-commerce, what should people get? So we have 4DX. What other ones are like must reads? I mean, like I say, I read, listen to like 3 to 6 Audible books a week. So I'm asking personally too, what else I should be putting on the queue.
Oh yeah, I've got the Audible hookup. That's my thing there. I love Jim Collins. Did Good to Great, great choice. He's a professor that basically went in and analyzed, particularly in Good to Great, why these certain Fortune 500 companies were so good for that certain time period. And he identified, common characteristics among each of the companies, and those were kind of his principles of what Good to Great was. I mean, Peter Thiel he was one of the founders of eBay, I believe. 0 to 1.
0 to 1, yeah.
Incredible book.
I'm listening to that right now, yeah.
Oh, dude, that's such a great book.
Yeah.
That is a great book. Any of the lean startup, I mean, there's a whole series of them. It just,
anything specific to e-commerce that you could think of? I mean, obviously these are all business books. I can't think of one, any specific to e-commerce sellers.
Sure. That's a good question. I haven't focused specifically on e-commerce, just because, like I said, we did some of the foundational. Your business is business, no matter what you're selling and where you're selling. So you got to focus on those things first. I will say though that I've recently been getting into a gentleman by the name of Ryan Dice in Digital Marketer. He has some pretty fabulous stuff going on. And it's do it yourself, so you're not paying a consultant thousands of dollars to do it. But if you can put in the time and it makes sense for you to do it, then he's probably maybe say
cutting edge, leading edge of marketing. For sure. Anyone else that you think other people should be following or looking at online? I've been so trying to just dug into my business that
spent too much time on.
Smart. That's smart. You're disciplined. The 4DX. So I'll stick to that. So your dad, Tim, and then
Yes,
the next.
Ryan, and he is our managing partner of the Lullaby Lane side. So he has the kind of the day-to-day responsibilities as our CEO, which is beautiful for me because you have Ryan, who's about my age, a little bit younger, go-getter. I would even call him a visionary in a lot of senses. I mean, we've had multiple businesses that's been created. You have him, and then you have Tim, the gentleman who's been there, done that successfully, and then I'm kind of in the middle. And it allows me to kind of be a little free and creative and figure out what makes sense. And that's what helped me and allowed me to start Ezonomy is that having the freedom. And I love to I've been so caught up in my own business that it's been great. But I also love to talk with people and educate and communicate. That's one of my passions.
Right.
And so this has given me an outlet to do that.
So what would you say Ryan's superpower is?
There's not. I don't use this term lightly, but genius is probably a good term, and the ability to.
Give me an example of that. So where did you say normal person, and then Ryan does something to the site, or did something that you're like, this guy's a genius?
Well, he was the person I would say that came up with the what I mentioned before, the breast pump idea and going direct. Selling these to people, and it's just being able to see how something's going to happen. And being slightly different and slightly that it makes a little more sense.
Right.
And I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say, but just the ability to make connections.
He put two things together. Like he saw the Affordable Care Act, he saw you already selling breast pumps, and then instead of just doing it the same old way, kind of putting them together, and maybe people would see a lot of obstacles with going direct and maybe dealing with insurances and other things. He saw an opportunity there.
Yeah, like tip of the spear kind of thing. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have a great group. I think all of us have our own strengths and weaknesses that we bring to the team.
And so what's your superpower? It's the hardest to. I ask you last because it's the hardest to identify our own. And you're a very humble person, so I'm going to ask you to just really tell me. With the business, if you think about the business, what does everyone else tell you that is your superpower?
I don't know. I don't pay too much attention. Discernment. So
what do you mean by that? Yeah.
In other words, I think that's a good skill I have. So discernment would be like if two people are having a conversation. If I can sit there and I can watch this conversation and I can pretty clearly understand if they're actually communicating with each other, what one person's trying to say, if the other person's understanding it, what needs to be said. It's almost a facilitation of an agreement.
Yeah.
So that'd probably be one of my.
So, Wes, on that note, user feedback. It seems like you do kind of testing. You talk to people who are moms. What's some I don't know if you call it discernment, but user feedback that you were talking to some moms and how that created maybe a new product or a thought process that create a new product? Because I think oftentimes we don't ask our users enough on what they want or what they're not liking in certain products. Sure.
Well, we had it goes back to the bundles, and actually that's what inspired some of the bundles early on. It's just folks would say, you have this set of baby bowls, and someone would ask, hey, are the baby spoons, or do you have something that goes with this? And that would be great. And so we'd look at that, and that would be again another.
It's like hitting upside your head. You're like, okay, maybe we should have our spoons with this.
Well, it's can't see the trees through the forest.
Right. And then, so tell me about what's also interesting about what you guys do is you do a lot of great content marketing. I look at your blog. You have like baby wearing safety tips or carriage buying guide and a lot of different things. So. What's I guess the direction? Who sets the direction of that? And I know I don't know if it's the lady on it, Rachel Sowers is like the lady doing it. So tell me her role and then how you decide what to put out as far as content goes.
Sure. Well, kind of from a 30,000 foot perspective, to be successful in retail, whether it's online or in the business, you have to create a following. You have to bring value to people.
Right.
That's what sets you apart. And so the point of the content is to connect with people,
Yeah.
is to create a community, to create value with folks. If you're just trying to sell them a stroller or a breast pump, they can get that anywhere. They can get that on Amazon.
Yeah.
They do get that on Amazon, and that's why we sell
Hopefully
it.
from you. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you want an actual, community where you can, continue to, offer products and services and build the lifetime value of a customer,
Yeah.
you got to get great content. And so
Yeah.
that's why we, try to focus on content, so they feel like we're not just, we're not just trying to sell them something.
Yeah. Delivering value.
Yeah, I've said this from the beginning with our staff, is that, when someone comes into the store and they're having their first child, you have the ability to directly impact how well that experience, or how good that experience is, by the products that you offer. If you give them something that doesn't work for them, they know that, and it could negatively affect some of that experience. And I know that sounds like, grandiose, but in a sense, it's pretty accurate. If you give them something that causes issues, that's directly affected on them. So you have a lot of power in folks' lives. So you got to take that seriously.
Yeah. So what has worked with building the community as far as content goes? Like what for you guys have the content has worked the best?
Sure. Well, like you said, with blogs, that's a great part of it. In our retail location, which we have a 7,000 square foot retail location in Northwest Ohio, we offer classes.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
what
like
kind of classes?
Baby food making classes, baby yoga, baby sign language, music classes, and it's
amazing.
Not,
yeah.
It's not there to retire off of early.
What's the most popular class, or most popular two classes?
That's a great question. I'd be lying if I said I knew at the moment, because my head's been so buried in the Amazon piece. So I don't want to give you.
Is there a best guess? I'm just curious. So you have the sign language class, the food making class. What other classes?
Baby yoga, baby art. Probably the music classes would be popular, most popular.
I love that you're talking about this, Wes, because oftentimes when people are focused online, they're not like dealing directly with real people. And so I find adding that component in there is really powerful. Do you videotape these classes or anything?
Not really, just because it's such a personal kind of almost one-on-one experience with the folks. Yeah. So, but to go with what you're saying, you really have to be successful. You have to have omni-channel presence. You have to be. Can't just be your website, can't just be your store, can't just be Amazon. Yeah. Actually build your brand. You have to really focus on all of them.
Yeah. So you've sidetracked me a lot, but I'm gonna get back onto kind of from the beginning with your dad's company. But before we talk about that and what you did for that, and then that will get into more of the story with Lullaby Lane. Is your fun fact is crazy, and so I wanted to mention that. So you were in bodybuilding competitions, and you also are a trained opera singer. So on the bodybuilding front, I'm not going to ask you to take off your shirt and flex, but tell me about it.
Yeah, ever since when I was a kid, I always was heavier, and one day I've run marathons, I've done other kind of stuff like that, and just really trying to push myself. And one day I said, I want to do a bodybuilding competition. So, I took a couple months and educated myself, researched, and just understood how you really have to go about doing it. And then basically ate just chicken and rice and eggs for 4 months or 5 months straight.
So, how old were you at the time when you did this?
The first one I've done two. The first one, they're drug tested, by the way, so they're it's nice because it's not the guys that are the big boys aren't in there doing it. I was first one was like 5 years ago now, I think, at this point.
Okay.
So the last one was about 3 years ago. So it's the thing about bodybuilding, not to get too deep into it. It's an incredibly selfish sport. And it's not even the time spent in the gym; it's the time spent in the kitchen. I mean, it's hours and hours.
I've watched video on YouTube of some of these professional bodybuilders, and this guy has this whole morning routine. You've probably seen it of he talked about what Tupperware he buys because he's packaging all this stuff up in different things for the day. So I know exactly what you mean.
So if any private label is out there, there's a niche market for you.
Well, my e-commerce mind went to that when you talk about bodybuilding. I'm like, he's in the baby industry. I would think immediately when you said that because that's a huge industry, like with bodybuilders taking different supplements, like all sorts of things. Why didn't you decide to go that route?
It's a gray market. There's a lot of it is a gray market in the sense that it's not regulated by the FDA. Mm-hmm. It's an ingestible. You have liability issues from a business standpoint. That's not a road that we wanted to go down.
Yeah. So but babies, I'm paranoid about babies. Like,
well, yeah, your nice part is you're working with manufacturers.
Yes,
you're on their insurance, right? We have
I gotcha.
Obviously we have $1 million policy or insurance ourselves, but you also work with, other folks on theirs. So
right. Fun. So the train to opera side of things.
Yeah, that was definitely from college. So, again, following in the old man's footsteps, he got his degree in operatic performance.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
and ballet, believe it or not. So we're kind of our family. Yeah. So mom, same way. She's music history. So I went into college on I was kind of a slacker in high school, and so really the only reason I got into college was on a scholarship. So it was almost like an athletic scholarship because I only had a 3.6 GPA.
That's not a slacker.
3.7. Well, to get into school that I went to, it was like the average was like 4.2 or something.
Oh, wow.
So University of Florida was where I went to college. So I got waitlisted, and then I was lucky enough since I was on scholarship for singing, they boosted me in. So I'll admit that.
I said before that I wouldn't put you on the spot, or may not put you on the spot to sing, but if you feel inclined at any time. But I'd love to clip something in at the end if you have it.
I looked, I have to. Mom and Dad just moved away, so when I go up,
I knew you. I get that. I looked. Excuse. So the big influence for you, Wes, was obviously your dad, and you started with him. He had the durable medical equipment company, and you did some interesting stuff for that company. What kind of stuff were you doing?
Sure. So about 12 years ago, when he'd been in it for 10, 12 years already, we had an opportunity to provide durable medical, like you're saying, wheelchairs, basically custom wheelchairs for folks with severe disabilities. And so I was just out of college, and we started working together. So I really focused my time and energy on that and got certified as an assistive technology professional. And basically that's what I did for 10 years, was design custom rehab wheelchairs for people with severe issues like Christopher Reeve and Stephen Hawking type wheelchairs. So, that was a pretty incredible.
And we're talking like 10 years ago, right? Or more?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful because of the direct impact that you have on people's lives. Yeah. And so I still clearly to this day remember a lady that I built a custom wheelchair for her, and she was pretty severely obese, and so it was really, really custom. And I was there, and it probably took me about 5 hours to fit this lady once I built it and designed it and took it to her house to try to deliver it. But when we finally got it, she went outside, and it's the first time she'd been out of her house in 2 years.
Holy cow, seriously?
Yeah. Wow. So we went for a little walk together, which obviously is not part of the job description, but I just loved it. And she was so appreciative of that. So it was really cool to have direct patient care, basically.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I want to talk about one other thing on that note, but I don't want to forget. I want to ask about when you went online with that company, when you started putting stuff online, because I'm sure it was brick and mortar for a long time. But before, you have a real interesting fact on experience with muscular dystrophy.
Yeah, no. A couple years into the business of doing this, I heard of an opportunity for volunteering at a camp. So Muscular Dystrophy Association, Jerry's Kids, the telethon, a lot of people know about that.
Sure.
Well, another one of their big programs is MDA Camp. And so what that is basically for 1 week a year, you go and you do 24-hour direct patient care with a child with muscular dystrophy. So it's kids that are, what's the age? 6 to 17, I believe, is the age of the kids. Mm-hmm. And I did it that first year, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It's such a incredible experience. I've done it. I missed a couple years, but this was my 10th year that I did camp, and it's really hard to explain.
Yeah.
Just that, and because I was trying to think about this.
Yeah.
When you have a really, really close friend that, you can maybe not talk to them for 6 months or 8 months or 3 months. And
you just pick up where you left off.
Exactly. Pick up right where we left. That is what this is, but for 100 attendants and 100 kids. So it's like 200 best friends meeting for a week a year, every year, picking up exactly where you left off.
Yeah. I think this is powerful to talk about, not just from a personal standpoint, from also partially from a business standpoint of, seeing, probably you see some amazing things of drive and determination in these kids, that they are bound to a wheelchair and in horrible shape, and they probably have sunny dispositions more than someone who's, so well off. Can you talk about one experience, maybe with one person, how that impacted you?
Absolutely. No, you nailed it in that it's a reality check. I didn't get my Starbucks this morning or whatever. And then you can think about, well, there's a young, boy or girl that's never walked, that's in a wheelchair, that, the life expectancy is maybe 20, 21 years,
right.
And they have incredible disposition on life and just, are carefree and they love it. It's like, oh, okay, I guess things aren't so bad. And so I'll tell a story. It's trying to figure out, it's a little, there's bodily humor involved in it.
Go ahead.
I hope
Shoot.
it's not too terrible. You're like looking at me like,
I'm up for anything. Go ahead.
Okay. So, but it has a point. The first year I volunteered at MDA camp, I had a young man who was, I think, 9 at the time. And this is, again, my first experience. I've done wheelchairs, but I've never cared for someone with disability.
Yeah.
So the first camp, the first kid, the first night, we all stay in cabins, so I got to say that. So there's like 8 or 9 of us in these cabins. Some of these kids, they have to sleep in a hospital bed. They can't sleep in bunk beds like everyone, obviously, because they have severe issues. Right. So the first night, it's about 3 a.m., and I hear him, and he says, Wes. And I'm, what?
Right.
He's like, Wes.
Yeah, go back to bed. Yeah.
And like, Wes, I blanked myself. I pooped, which is, that's what happens. It's part of life. It's bodily humor. And so I get up and I go look, and he absolutely had, and it was overflowing the diaper. And, again, it's not a criticism. It's just part of life. But that, it took me about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get him all cleaned up, roll him over. This was my first time I've ever done this. So that was like, welcome to MDA camp. That was my first experience. But I'll tell you, I loved it. I absolutely loved the experience, and there's nothing like it. I would, if there's any filmmakers out there, like small filmmakers, please contact me. I think it would make an incredible movie, and it's hard to explain without.
Amazing documentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, documentary.
So I'm going to go back on the e-commerce path for a second. Thanks for sharing that story.
Tangent.
And don't listen to this story before you eat. But so the e-commerce, when did you first, you're in your dad's business, and when do you first go online? Sure.
So you remember there's 4 partners, myself, Ryan.
So were they there from, what point?
The Tim, the gentleman who invested, was after, but the 3 of us started. And so Ryan worked at my father's company.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And we realized real quickly that it was really difficult to bill Medicare and Medicaid and these private insurances, so we wanted to get out of that.
I'm in the health profession. I understand completely.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, yeah, it's
they control you, and they can slash your prices and everything else. Yeah,
there's nothing you can do about it. Exactly. Yeah. Tell some horror stories on that, but yeah. So we realized quickly that we wanted to, do something more free market where you're rewarded for the effort that you put in. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of people, we first just slapped up a website and put every product on there and figured people would just come in droves and buy our products. Well, that didn't happen. That never happens. So got, kind of reassessed, and we looked at it and came up with an idea of niche websites. And so we still have that business. It's small, but websites dedicated to basically one product or a line of products where we fulfill those orders. Mm-hmm. And so that was really our first experience with customizing a website for search engine optimization for that one key product.
What were they? I mean, initially it sounds like there were a lot of wheelchairs. What other durable medical equipment were popular?
Sure. We have a couple websites that do wheelchair cushions.
Okay.
And so, they're not huge. Each site does maybe $250,000-$300,000 a year. So it's not, it's not massive, but
to some people that's really good.
It's tiny. Yeah, that is good. No,
yeah.
it's definitely.
So
it's definitely
yeah.
Good. Wheelchair cushions, a piece of medical equipment that allows a person to stand who can't stand. So it's called a standing frame. Yeah. We sell those. There's 4 or 5 sites out there.
So which one did you put them all online at once, or did you say, well, I think we'll choose this piece of equipment and go with that first? What was your thought process?
Yeah, no, we started with one site as a niche site, and that was one of our wheelchair cushions. It's called the type of cushion called a Roho cushion, and so our website is pressuresorecushions.com. That's a real niche, but hey, if you have a bed sore, or
that's what you want.
That's exactly what you want.
That's huge for their quality of life. I mean,
it is, and it helps that we're not just online sellers. We have a history and a background and experience in that, so we're able to not just sell products, but we can help out with how it needs to be worked, and other questions as well that we can answer because of our history in healthcare.
Yeah. So you went from pressure sore cushions, and what was the next progression? Well,
actually, originally it was the brand name. Roho cushions was the originally, but we found quickly again, we all have
buy
stuff
pain.
Yeah, in that the brands didn't like us using their names in our URLs.
I see.
So trademark issues. So
I gotcha.
We had to transition away from that, which was a good experience, So it was that website, and then another website for wheelchair cushions, and then the Easy Stand, the standing frame website as well.
And so when did you get into the Lullaby lane?
Well, we had that going, and that was, like I was saying, around the time that we were looking for something with a larger market cap than medical equipment. And so we identified one specific type of stroller, tried to implement that model, basically the named, branded for that one item.
Did you start with strollers, or was there something else before that?
We started with that one stroller and baby. Yep, just that one.
The one where the person had to travel like miles to to just look at the $700 stroller, or was it a different stroller?
It was a different one, but it was similar. It was very similar. And what we were not to get too deep into it, but
go deep in it. Yeah.
Okay, so we looked at one of the things that we look at when choosing a product was the search volume on a monthly basis. Yeah. And so Roho cushions is probably somewhere around 30,000 for all the unit searches a month, if that, for all the keywords. This one particular stroller baby jogger was, I don't know, like 800,000 or 900,000 searches a month. So I was like, this is a different ball game. And
so someone goes on like Google keywords or something and searches the monthly volume.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and it's a slight tangent off that. The interesting thing is that, some of my research I've been doing and with consulting is that Amazon, to go back to Amazon, is now the number one place that people start their product research. In 2009, 19% of the people started product research on Amazon. 2015, a recent survey showed 44%.
Wow. That's amazing.
Research. It's a game changer. It's a complete game changer. So
is there a service that you like to use to figure out, because obviously Google Keyword Tool is free. Is there a way to figure out the monthly searches on Amazon, like certain tools for that?
There is. There's multiple ones. We use a service called Merchant Words.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The thing is that the volume is so much more massive in terms of monthly searches than what's on AdWords in the keyword tool that I'm having trouble believing that it's actually that volume. It could be. I mean, I could be wrong, but we don't use it as gospel. We use it more to just a trend.
So you look at Google keywords, compare it to merchant words, and see how comparable they are, and just use it. Okay, this is the highest one. Maybe this data isn't accurate, but it's the highest search term or something like that.
Correct. And it may be, it may be.
You just don't know how accurate it is.
Yeah.
Because it's not coming directly from Amazon.
You got it. It's not published information. It's someone's algorithm. So, We found in general it works, but again, there's no way to track the specific volume.
Yeah. So you start with the first stroller, and how does that go?
That went well. We created a website specifically for that stroller, just like the old business model. Had a little success. It was a lot more competitive market than what we were used to with the medical supplies.
Yeah.
And
less
so,
niche type of thing.
Yeah. And so that was fine. And then we said, all right, well, let's try to get a couple more products. But then that was when we really quickly realized that you needed a physical retail location to contract with these manufacturers. And so,
why is that? Trust purposes, or?
It is for you have to bring value to these brands. And so, understanding that these are sought after brands that people are knocking on their door on a daily basis to try to sell their products. These brands don't really need to contract with anyone. They don't care, in the sense that if you say, hey, I can, sell $100,000 of your product online, but that's all that I'm doing, they're like, well, okay, we're not interested.
Why is that?
There's the channel is already somewhat, online is already saturated in terms of where to get product.
I see.
So, if a brand was worried about someone, typing in and trying to find their product, that's a different story. But people are searching specifically for these products, and there's already major companies out there selling them. So there's no value to just selling online. So we realized quickly that you have to bring some other tangible value to these companies. And so and you have to identify on a per industry basis what that is.
Per manufacturers, they may have different values that would hit home for them.
Absolutely. It's a trench warfare kind of thing. You got to figure out what these guys want, and then you have to do your best to give it to them, to contract with them. And so one of the things that they wanted was a nice retail location for their products to be displayed in. And that's we have a really beautiful big old store for that reason, and we do well in it too. I mean, we sell a lot of product in our store, but originally it was almost just the cost of doing business.
What other value surprised you, Wes, that you're like, why do they want me to do whatever it is, or that brings value to them?
Sure. That's a good question.
Because we're talking online is like, we could have 1 million people do it online, and you could search for it online. Retail location, that makes perfect sense. Any others that you could think of that through talking to these manufacturers that added value that you discovered?
Well, I don't know about a specific thing. More that you are vested in that industry. I mean, you have to show them that you are a baby retailer. You whatever it is, however, whether it's a website, retail location, you have to pass the sniff test.
Yeah.
And not just be someone that wants to buy and sell product online. There's no value to it. So
they want an expert.
Yeah, it's just a combination of a bunch of small things.
Yeah.
So it took a while to contract with these guys, but once we did, and then once the floodgates opened, that's really when our Amazon sales also just hit the roof, because you don't ever have to. We never have to worry about finding possible product opportunities to sell.
Yeah,
they're all there.
Yeah. I know we were talking, before we hit record, about the barrier to entry, and the barrier to entry is a little bit higher, which is good for people. But then if you're wanting other people to do it or teaching other people, it makes it a little bit challenging. But I guess this opens up, how do you help people navigate that barrier to entry?
That's a great, that's a great question. It's you nailed it when you said that the barrier to entry is high, but when you get there, it's unbelievable. And it's a matter of, one, setting expectations ahead of time, which, thank you, you actually helped me with this in our conversation. Thinking about educating and thinking about doing consulting. I want to be upfront with these folks and say, listen, it's a lot of money that you're paying for this. Please understand that this is not easy. This is really difficult. A lot of people will probably fail at this, but if you persevere, if you put in the time, you put in the energy, and you can make it happen. And when you get there, it's very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Is there any advice you have, or what advice you have for people how should they start the conversation with one of these manufacturers? They've identified what industry they want. They've identified maybe these 3 manufacturers. How should they start a conversation?
Sure, sure. Well, I would back up slightly from there
Yeah,
and
go
say
ahead.
once they figure out what industry that they want to be a part of, create a company and name it something as what it doesn't have to be as blatant as Wes's toy shop or Wes's baby store, but something that identifies you as part of that industry.
Right.
And from there, you take the mindset that you're in X industry. And then when you start that conversation, you're not just someone that is buying and selling online, you are part of that industry.
Right.
And it permeates your conversation, and people get that.
Yeah.
That's the they want to see that you're there. And if it's in your mindset that you're in that industry, you're going to be more successful.
Yeah, we're not a DME company. We are Lullaby Lane, so people know immediately you're in the baby industry.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you went from the first stroller. So tell me, when was the first big milestone that you hit online?
That's great. Yeah. So that first stroller that we sold on our own website and in the store, that was, what happened was Amazon contacted us and said, hey, we want you to be a third-party seller on Amazon. I think the reason they did that is because, Amazon is all about being the everything store. They want people that they want to offer everything in the freaking world. And so some brands that they don't have access to, I think what they do is find people that do have access to them, reach out to them. And that's, there's no proven of that, but I think that's what it was. And so this same stroller that, we would sell maybe 1 to 2 a week in the store, maybe 1 to 2 online, we said, all right, we'll give it a shot. So we listed this stroller.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, I mean, this is like a $500 or $600 purchase. So like selling 2 a week is like $1,200 a week. If you're selling, online and in the store, that's like $2,400 a week. So I'm just making that notation because he's just selling 1 or 2, but like this is a high ticket.
It's a great
item.
point.
So, anyways.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, it was $659, I believe, was the retail on this stroller.
Right.
And so, we would, like I said, 1 or 2 in the store, 1 or 2 online. Well, we listed on a Friday over the weekend, came back on Monday, and we'd sold like 13 units.
Wow.
So that was like the first light bulb. Interesting. So, yeah.
So what do you do? So when you see that happen, how do you increase it? I mean, you're thinking, okay, how can we do more of this? What do you do next?
Well, yeah, for me, I just started reading and started, getting everything I could, started and getting my hands dirty. Let's just get in with Amazon. Let's talk to Amazon. There's a lot of information out there online, and some of it's good, some of it's not very good. But the best way for us was just to, roll up our sleeves and start, learning about Amazon in Amazon. And, that's really what we did. We spent at least hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last couple of years just educating ourselves on how to properly sell on Amazon.
So you have this one, and this is just one product. Mm-hmm. So what did you do next with introducing other products or to increase this, the sales of this one?
Sure. Well, we did a little research to understand and found out about sales rank, found out about, the basics of Amazon, and then started identifying other products that we could sell that had high sales rank that on Amazon. And so we looked at selling initially against Amazon retail and found real quickly that we did not want to do that.
They'll crush you?
They'll crush you. Yeah. I mean, they like I said, some folks say that they share the buy box, and they probably do in a lot of cases and experiences, but we don't want to risk that. Like, hey, let's have $20,000 worth of inventory.
How do you know that? Does it say like this is Amazon? If someone's like doing research and they see, the baby jogger, is there something that says this is from Amazon? Like, what's the designation that this is the Amazon retailer?
Sure. So when you look on Amazon, you can see it will say, Prime eligible, shipped and sold by Amazon.com.
I gotcha.
So you see that, that's Amazon.
Like, don't go there.
Exactly. That for us, again, everyone's a little different, but how we grew is staying away from Amazon.
Yeah.
Again, it's controlling the control.
How did you figure that out? Did you try it and it just?
Yeah. yeah, try it and read. Try something, read about it. Try something else and read about it. Try something else and read about it. Strategy. And implement, watch. Strategy, implement, watch. Strategy, implement, monitor. So, and we were pretty lucky early on to run into the bundles, and to have all that inventory available and all those different brands available. Um, you know, but still, it took us a long time to understand that. And then when we started doing, at first, that wasn't even FBA. That was just.
That's what I was going to ask, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell me about the transition of shipping out of your warehouse or shipping to FBA, and then because there's logistics with the bundles too.
Absolutely, yeah. We, now if I showed you, we actually have a whole production line on how we do bundles, including, machinery. But back then, I was just working out of our little stock room in our 1,200 square foot, store. So we would
You're
have
just picking the bundle.
Yep, and just have boxes and boxes lined up along the wall as we grew, and finally we said, hey, we need to get out of here and get a warehouse and get a main office.
So how do the bundles work now? I mean, are they? If I picture, are they going down like a conveyor belt and it's like something's wrapping them all together, or how does that work?
It's still manual somewhat.
Oh, it is? Okay.
We have a shrink wrap machine and a heat tunnel
that
we do use for our large quantity SKUs. But some of the smaller ones still done by hands. It's a combination.
Okay. I'm just trying to visualize what that looks like.
No, you got it.
And you ship them all out to FBA, or do you ship them out from your warehouse now with the bundles?
Sure. We're about 90 or so percent FBA right now. Mm-hmm. Most of the merchant fulfilled stuff that we do is typically because of an advantage for shipping. So for some reason, if it's a low margin item and it's not cost effective to send it FBA and then send it out to the customer, we'll do merchant fulfilled. We'll also do merchant fulfilled for testing purposes, like if we test a new bundle, we'll do it merchant fulfilled because you can use multiple items, one item, in multiple bundle tests. So if I had a stroller and a car seat, I could do a bundle of a stroller and a car seat, a stroller and a sunshade, and use that same base stroller. But then once you find and realize what it's a high-selling, SKU or ASIN, and you commit to it FBA.
I gotcha. Does someone need you for a second, by the way? I'm just curious.
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you need to take a minute, because I saw it look up, and I'm like, am I interrupting a meeting that you're supposed to be in? So you sold 13 back Monday morning. So what was the next major milestone with Lullaby Lane?
It was a blur, to be honest with you, since the beginning. I would say probably my first $50,000 month, which was about 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah.
And then...
And how many, for the $50,000 month, how many products... Because that was just the one stroller, which is the 13, right? So how many products are you talking? Is it still just the one baby stroller, or are there other things that you introduced?
I think I had about 6 or 7 or 8 products. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Products at the time.
I'm dusting off the cobwebs for a second.
It is. But yeah. And then, I got a cat. It's interesting. When you grow to a certain size, I call it hitting the invisible Amazon wall.
Yeah, tell me about that. Yeah.
You grow to a certain size, and you can no longer do it by yourself. And so there's a point where, because I've talked with other sellers that like this too, there's a point where you can basically go in, look at your Seller Central account, check a few things here and there, and then get a fully understanding where all your inventory is, where all your sales are.
Right.
At some point, when you've grown enough, you look up and you realize you've got like $10,000 worth of inventory. It's been sitting there for 2 months or 3 months.
Right.
That you're like, oh crap, I can't do this anymore by myself. So that's when we started looking at bringing in people, and I was probably doing about $1 million a year in sales before I brought someone out. There was more people, obviously, Ryan and Steve, but I was doing the majority of it. It was about $1 million in sales a year before we brought someone else on. Yeah,
Wes, I think this is a really important point to hone in on for a second. The invisible Amazon ceiling. At what other metrics do you look at? Like, what should people be looking out for? Like, maybe it's $1 million of sales, maybe it's X amount of inventory. What are those things that now looking back, you're like, okay, I should have started implementing some things and looking at these specific metrics beforehand? Like, what are those?
Sure. There are They're really, for us, there's a lot, but the two main ones I would say is one is inventory turnover rate, so how fast you turn over your inventory, and two is your profit margin. So a lot of people, when they do Amazon sales, they think of Amazon as a customer. So if we have 300 SKUs and some of them make money, some of them lose money, but as long as the end of the month I'm up, I'm in the positive, then it's okay.
Right.
Well, okay, you can do that, but to be a real successful Amazon seller, you got to go SKU by SKU.
You cut the ones that aren't working.
It's 80-20, that bad boy. Absolutely. Always be focusing on your top performers and testing new ones. So inventory turnover rates, which is basically the more inventory you have sitting there, the more cash you have just sitting on the shelf, dollar bills, on the shelf, and then profitability per item as well.
So at that $1 million mark, you realized, okay, I need other help or software or stuff. What was that you needed to inject in to get to the next level?
Sure. If we could have done it over, I would have invested in software earlier. I think we would have invested for sure in software earlier. But what we brought on was another buyer. We call them portfolio managers because, like I mentioned earlier, Amazon's almost like the stock market, where there changes up and down quickly. So we have portfolio managers that manage books of business, each of them, and then they have their numbers that they're expected to hit, profitability and sales numbers.
How do you find and train a buyer?
We homegrown it. That's what I did first, is train someone basically to do exactly what I did. Yeah. And then, from there, we just kind of, I think next was one warehouse person, because we started with higher priced items and worked our way down into lower priced and higher volume items. Okay.
So that was one thing. You brought in the buyer, which makes perfect sense. What else needed to be injected to get to the next level?
More space, for sure. More space. That's when we moved and got a new warehouse, and just give us the freedom to have and store more inventory, move more inventory, because it's all our warehouse is basically a turnaround center. It's not a traditional warehouse. We just get it in, and we have metrics on how fast we can get it back out. Yeah. So that you also have to be very careful of how you send inventory into Amazon, because one of the things they grade you on as a seller that's not published in your account health is your inbound inventory issues and the rate percentage that you mess up stuff into them. And so that can negatively affect your account as well. So we have to create quality control checks and double checks of inventory. It was really just a whole process that you go through.
Yeah. And Wes, you mentioned software. So you would have done software earlier. What software do you use?
Sure.
Or recommend others using maybe that you don't use?
We started out with QuickBooks. Well, we started out with just Excel spreadsheets. Then we went to QuickBooks Enterprise with their inventory add-on piece. That we would have changed that. Definitely would not have done that again if we had the choice. So we went to more of a pure inventory management recently. And went to QuickBooks Online because they integrate with each other. So it's allowed us, and we have internal software that we've designed to look at age of inventory, turnover rate. It's interesting. That's one of the things that I've found with a lot of these big sellers, especially folks that have been around for a while, is they all have their own homegrown software because there was nothing out there that that met their needs.
Yeah, people are piecemealing stuff together.
Yeah, and it's interesting about Skubana is that Chad, the guy that created this, he was an Amazon seller, and he created his own brand. He had, did a lot of business.
Still is, yeah.
Absolutely. And I like him. We don't use his software personally because of the healthcare division with the breast pumps that we're talking about.
So I'm going to ask you about that. Yeah. So I'm going to do a quick word from our sponsor, Skubana, for a second. Then I'm going to ask you why you don't use it, actually. So I always tell people, imagine if you can combine all the software tools you currently use to run your e-commerce business into one centralized cloud platform at a small cost. Would you use it? Of course you would. Skubana does all of that. I personally use them. And exactly what you were talking about before, Wes, is the profitability of SKUs. is huge, because I don't know, okay, there's this fees, there's return fees, it factors in all these things, and I can actually look in the dashboard and see what the profitability is without piecemealing like an Excel spreadsheet just in trying to figure it all out. So I personally love it, use it. So now I'll give you the floor to tell me why you don't use it.
Sure. Like I mentioned before, we have another division of our company that is bills healthcare providers, or insurance, basically insurance contracts. And we need a very specific software that is electronically connected to these companies. And so we end up using that software specifically for that purpose. And so those, it's such a specialty software that doesn't really talk to anything else. So because of that, we kind of had to build one of our own software. But yeah, no, at the time before we were doing breast pumps, and this is, a plug as well, is that I did a ton of research on these different softwares, and there's a class of software, enterprise level software, basically, that does most things. And a lot of these guys were charging, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month.
Tens of thousands, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I met Chad at a sellers conference in this past spring, and we got to talking. And he's telling us about the software that he's designing, and I love it because it has all those same functions, but it's a very small. It's like 15 cents or 12 cents per FBA shipment. Relatively speaking, it's a much smaller percentage.
So you only pay more if you're selling more, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's great. It's good stuff.
And so what type of people, obviously you do consulting too, what type of people would you recommend? And we were talking off that obviously you recommend different tools, and that's one of them in your toolbox that you recommend to people. What type of people do you think, do you recommend using it?
Sure. It would almost, Jeremy, it would almost be as opposed to the type of person, the number of SKUs that you're carrying. So, and that goes kind of back to that wall that you hit. I think if you have just a few SKUs, at least early on, even if you have, pretty significant volume, you may be able to do it on your own. Because it's pretty quick calculations. We did that. But when you get over maybe, I don't know, a dozen, 2 dozen SKUs, somewhere around there, whatever your volume is, it's so easy to just hit the dashboard and check out what's going on.
Right.
So yeah, any seller would benefit from it. The other part is that if you're only selling on Amazon right now, it does integrate into other platforms. So eBay, Shopify,
it automates a lot of different things that you don't have to do. Yeah, I don't trust my calculation enough, Wes, to not go with something like that. So tell me about, what do you guys talk about behind closed doors? Like, so you and Chad, two top Amazon sellers. What is the conversation like?
That's, we had a little different business models in a sense.
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah, he built his private label brand. I mean, that was his and continues to be some of his bread and butter.
For sure.
So
that's why I want to be a fly in the wall of that conversation.
The difference, and there's common threads that big sellers run into.
Yeah.
And
which is what? Yeah.
Yeah, software, people, Amazon retail, a lot of stuff that it's kind of higher level stuff in terms of, API integration. Like, it was interesting. I was at a by invite only sellers conference hosted by Amazon Retail, and the keynote speaker was the VP of all FBA. And interesting.
You want his personal number?
Yeah.
What did he say? Yeah.
What was curious is that this was all sellers that were probably at least $1 million a piece. So these were, there's probably 50, 60 of us in the room. Yeah. And it was in Detroit. And what was really interesting is that there were 2 areas that had no clue of that they wanted to focus on. One was seller performance. And so seller performance is apparently taking, weeks and months, if at all, to get back to some of these larger sellers. And the second is knockoffs and brand registry, these Chinese companies coming in, or foreign companies, it's probably not just Chinese, and hijacking product listings. And so they really, and I believe this, they truly had no idea that this was going on. And to me,
what do you mean by seller performance? Explain that.
So Seller Central, and you have seller support, which helps us as third-party sellers.
Yeah.
Seller performance is the group of people that has no names, no faces, no email address, and no telephone numbers to get to these people. What they do is they look at your account, the health of your account. And if you are not healthy for certain metrics, shipping, late shipping,
I gotcha.
your account can risk being suspended.
Yes.
And so these big sellers are trying to get in touch with seller performance, and they're just not even hearing back from them. So Amazon's system has grown so fast and is so automated that there's some real kinks that they have to work out. So I think it was eye-opening for this guy.
And the knockoffs.
Yeah.
Also?
Yeah, absolutely. And then how there's such a movement for private label on Amazon that, with any movement, there's always kind of a gray and black market.
People abuse things.
Yep, that goes along with it. So that is what's happening. And these folks that are doing, 6-7 figures in private label are having people come in and wreck these product listings.
What does that mean? Like, how do they wreck product listings?
So if you're selling,
I mean, not to give anyone an idea out there, but I'm just curious.
So if you're selling I don't know, a shower curtain, okay, and it's a very popular shower curtain, you have 3 different colors. They'll either come in and put their product, which is a different color, on that same listing, or they'll just send their product directly to your FBA listing.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
How does that even get past?
Well, again, Amazon's so automated that we as sellers have the ability to create variations and create parent-child listings.
Right.
So anyone, I could, theoretically.
So it's like me sending some defunct stroller to your Amazon FBA account or something?
Sure, absolutely.
And people do that? They'll just send product to someone else's account?
Yep. Yeah, it's more, again, it's the foreign people that just send product in. They don't fully know what they're doing, so they can wreck people's, $100,000 product listing. It just goes away, or, it's really negatively affected by these foreign sellers.
That's crazy. So what else was interesting about that Amazon event?
Sure. It's the first time I've ever seen more than 2 Amazon, employees in the room at the same time. But I liked that they were first. That was the first time they were reaching out to big sellers or to sellers in general to try to understand what was going on. So that part was great. I took some photos of basically all the pain points for all these major sellers, and so I have them with me, but it was interesting to see kind of the common pain points among folks.
I'm sure there were a lot. What were a few that would be noteworthy?
Well, the 2 that we talked about, obviously, those were the big ones. Integration, API integration, product searching, how our systems talk to Amazon systems. So, MWS, Merchant Web Services, how we are able to connect with and talk to Amazon's systems, and what we can do to improve, or what they can do.
Does that mean on the back end, what you put in the description or keywords, how that affects the listing, or
back end of how you record your sales, how you get your data, how you reconcile your inventory, how you reconcile your sales, that whole aspect.
Yeah. So Wes, we talk about the invisible Amazon ceiling, right? So the $1 million mark. What was the next major milestone that you had to break through for the ceiling?
Well, at that point, when we were still fairly young, it was all about cash flow.
Yeah.
When we did those bullwhip buys.
Because you have huge amounts of physical product. I mean, you're talking hundreds of dollars for each one unit. Yeah. So how do you manage cash flow? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that cadence of accountability, buying bi-weekly or weekly, really just, ramping that up on somewhat of a slower basis. And, at any one time, we probably have near $1 million in inventory.
It's a lot, yeah.
So you have to just always make sure it's healthy. So I guess that, that's so the next thing that we focus on, we design a software ourselves for this, is the aging inventory. There's reports through Amazon, but I want something that's real quick, a dashboard that I can look at and see what the age of our inventory is.
Yeah.
And so that's another one of the metrics for our portfolio managers, is make sure that you don't have any inventory that's over, 90 or 60 or 90 days.
Yeah, that's really important, actually. So the next one was looking at the And so what level are we talking about that helps you push through by looking at that takeaway, the aging inventory?
It's about, we're between 2.5 and 3 million in sales, I think, at that point.
Yeah. And the cash flow. So at what point do you realize, okay, we need something outside, or do you just get more credit cards?
Well, we don't. Well, that's a good question, and we don't use any credit cards.
Really?
Just no credit cards whatsoever. Absolutely, we don't use any. We have a line of credit from the bank, but we don't use it on inventory purchases. We would use it for capital expense. So forklift, shelving, whatever. You know,
Right.
something that you can depreciate over time. We use pretty much the credit limits of our manufacturers, and so we leverage them and leverage that for that sales.
Yeah. And obviously you've built relationships with these people over decades, right? What should people be thinking is normal when they're first in with the manufacturer, and then maybe 5 and 10 years out? What should they be asking to improve terms?
Well, we only started in baby about that 4 years ago. So those relationships are less. All of them are less than 5 years old. Just to clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
What you want to do is it's not just about that initial understanding of what the manufacturer wants. You have to, and this is another actually thing that Tim, you're asking about, his
expertise.
He said, expertise is that, treat these people as partners. They're not just someone that you buy from. They're not vendors. They have hopes and dreams and wants. What can you do to help them get to that place? And they'll be very responsive in helping you to get yours as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's classic, business stuff. Build the relationships. And so that's what allowed us to grow.
Yeah. So what's an ideal for someone, like terms-wise?
Unlimited.
I mean, like realistic. Let me rephrase that.
Well, it all depends on the manufacturer. So, I can
should someone be like, "Oh, this is awesome. I have 45 days to pay, or 2 months, or so." What should we think about?
Well, every industry is obviously a little different, but our lead time is about 11 to 12 days, depending on the product on average. So, if you have net 30 and you have a 12-day lead time.
So when you order it, it doesn't get into the facility or whatever for 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, to Amazon's facility. Yeah, 2 weeks. So, you have to kind of sell through that. If it's net 30, the bill comes due.
2 weeks.
You got it. So you got to sell through it. So, we try for net 45, net 60.
I see.
And obviously high term. So if you have net 60 in our way, you can pretty much, you're only limited by the amount of credit that you have.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I want to know. Like, okay, is net 60 unrealistic? Is that realistic? Should we only really be shooting for 45 day? So that is helpful. Sure. And at what point do you decide we need outside capital? Because you went bootstrap and then you realized we're growing a lot. We need money for inventory. What point should people think about injecting or have someone else inject capital?
Well, when we got our first, capital, our first, investment in the company, we were not as sophisticated as we are now in terms of profitability. So I would say that we should have focused on that first. And then if we would have done that, then really it's just a matter of figuring out how quickly or how slowly you want to grow. So if you don't need a capital investment, you can do it without, but you have to bootstrap it and you have to go a little slower. So that's it's going to be how fast you want to. That's your. Once you're profitable and you're sure that you're profitable, there's basically an unending amount of opportunities. So it's just a matter of how fast do you want to grow.
Right. Wes, this is fantastic. I mean, I could literally take 10 more hours and ask you all these questions. I'm looking at it. We're like right at an hour and 33, and I told you I'd finish an hour and 30. So maybe just 2 more things. I mean, you talked about the $1 million invisible ceiling, then the $2.5 million. What are the next levels that allowed you to break through? Maybe it's a $5 million, then to the $7 million, or whatever those points are.
Yeah, I mean,
this is amazing. So I appreciate your time with this.
Yeah, no problem at all. So really, it goes back to that profitability and understanding if you're profitable or not, and then your cash flow. And really, it's then it's the terms with the manufacturers. And so it's incremental at that point. I would say how you grow. If you want to make leaps and bounds at that point, again, you need one of two things. You need cash hard cash
Yeah.
that you can spend on inventory, or two, exclusive relationships with manufacturers to sell their products still under their credit terms. So that's how you can build your business quicker too, is working with manufacturers, building these relationships, educating them on what you do with Amazon, and then ultimately the goal is working towards being the exclusive distributor of their product on Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, we're still talking, even if you do those things, right, you still have to sell $7 million of product. Like, what gets you to, like, the actual just selling the stuff?
It's infrastructure. You just have to slowly. You probably need an accounts payable and accounts receivable person at that time. You need, probably multiple warehouse folks. You have to deal then with.
I want you talking about this stuff because people think, oh, you could do, $7 million within 3 years, or annually, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So I want you to talk about, just briefly some of the systems in place that allow this to actually work.
Sure. Well, obviously
you're not like sitting on your couch like eating popcorn and watching TV.
No.
So
and the people that say you can do something overseas and make $1 zillion, there's a cap to it. You can do that to a point, but you can't. So you're right. It's typical business stuff. So you have multiple employees, HR, health plan, retirement plan, all that kind of stuff.
Don't tell me this. This is sounding complicated. No?
You say that right. What you want to do is create a great culture, and that really is the success. I'm fairly smart. My partner's smart. All these guys are smart folks. Fine. Smarts are nothing if you don't have a great staff and crew around you that love what they do and like to come into work. So. What we've tried to do is really build a great culture within the company, and that really allows you to grow just as much as anything else.
Yeah. So for this type of business, what kind of staff count does it take to put in to create that infrastructure?
No, that's another great question. So, and I was just talking with a client about that the other day. So in our company, we have about 22 people, but again, we have that medical side and we have the retail side.
Yeah, you have this whole probably billing stuff that they have to do, and that's separate from probably the e-commerce on Amazon stuff.
Yep, and that's what I was thinking about is that if we really, really pared it down, and it was just a bare bones crew and we did nothing but Amazon, you could probably do that in 6 people, maybe.
Then you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. You're thinking like Amazon's the only channel.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to diversify. You're right. We're probably not going to grow to $30 or $40 million on Amazon because we want to focus on other channels as well. And if you're right, you don't sleep at night if 99% of your business is on one channel.
Yeah. All right, Wes, I'm going to let you off the hook. But I love this conversation. And I want you to tell people where they can find you, Lullaby Lane, and then ezonomy.com. And so my last question, since it's the Scubana e-commerce mastery series, my question is, what's been the lowest point e-commerce wise, lowest point e-commerce moment, business, and what's been the proudest?
Sure. Let's see, the lowest point, which it's good. We haven't talked about this yet, and this was one thing that helped us clean up our act on Amazon. We were doing probably about $1.5 million on average of sales a year at this point. We got some information from one of the Amazon seller support staff about weights of boxes that you can ship in, and even though it's in Amazon's rules that the maximum weight you can ship multiple items in a box is 50 pounds, we had it documented clearly that this seller support person said, no, it's more than that as long as you do X.
I see.
We did that multiple times, and they stopped our selling privileges for 3 days.
Holy cow.
Because of it. We could sell the products, but we couldn't ship anything new into Amazon.
Wow.
So that cost us $35,000 or $40,000 from one mistake that was even documented by Amazon. So that was an eye-opening. Hey, you really got to get your act together and be proactive and be super, cautious on what you do with Amazon because it's such an automated system.
I mean, how do you even avoid that though? Because they told you this, and then you followed it, and then the automated system basically kicked it kicked it, whatever verdict that was.
You check and double check and probably triple check on what's going on. So we're lucky. After that, we've never had an issue with our account. So that was like the get your act together kind of.
So that's just a matter of contacting the right people to show them the documentation, or
we were contacted by our performance teams, that seller performance team at the time, and said, hey, listen, you guys, we're going to stop your account. But actually, they didn't even contact us first. They just said, nope, you can't ship product in. So we had to contact them, and then they contacted us back and stuff. So
gotcha.
That was it. So that was definitely
that's a low moment. Yeah.
High moment is, probably the first time we hit 5 million.
Tell me about that.
Because that was one of our goals again with that 40x. The trying to increase our sales that year. Well, we did it. We hit it, and in a pretty big way, and went pretty significantly over that. So it was just nice to know that that kind of stuff works, and it actually creates tangible differences in your business.
So what do you do to celebrate?
Nothing too big.
You go to karaoke and whip out opera, or what do you do?
No, that was a celebration among the staff. It's not about us. It's about the folks that actually did the other work and put it hard and made it happen.
Does your staff know that you are a trained opera singer, or
no? Probably some of them. We've grown fairly fast, so.
Wes, I really appreciate it. This has been hugely valuable, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Absolutely. Well, it's been valuable for me as well, because it's not often that I talk and talk and talk and talk. So you can definitely learn something when you're speaking or communicating, and you're a great facilitator of that. Thank
you, Wes. Congratulations, everyone. Check out Lullaby Lane and ezonomy.com. So I messaged Wes, and we had to hop back on because there were two things that we had to talk about, and so we needed to include this. And one is an amazing story, which we'll talk about, which leads into what we talked about in the actual interview. And then the first thing is we were talking about some mind-blowing results and things you do for brands. And so I wanted to make sure we include that. I had that notated on my notes, and I didn't get to it. So Wes was kind enough to hop back on. So talk about, obviously with Ezonomy, you consult with brands, and talk about the El Medina brands story.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, early on when we started doing consulting, we talked with a local venture capital firm here in Northwest Ohio, and they had invested in a local company called El Medina Brands that makes almond cookies. Basically, they're kosher almond cookies. And so, they're a seven-figure seller. They do typical distribution channels, Walmart, grocery stores, Target, that kind of stuff. But they were looking for a new avenue. Yeah. And they were interested in Amazon. So basically, what we did is I worked with them to onboard selling on Amazon. Yeah. And so it's interesting because it's different than a typical model. You have your private label sellers and you have third party. Well, there are some brands that are starting to sell directly on Amazon, which to me makes good sense if you want to go down that path. Right. Well, what's happened is the sales channel, Amazon, for them has turned into their most profitable sales channel. So it's not their biggest. But at the end of the day, biggest doesn't really matter. You pay the bills with the money that you bring home, and so that's turned into their most profitable sales channel. So I've had conversations with some other folks that are possibly looking at going that route as well.
They must love you over there.
It was I got a lot of free cookies, and that was totally worth it.
Give them my address.
All right.
So, what do you do? What are some of the key things that you do with onboarding?
Well, Amazon, in a sense, is like no limit hold'em poker. The saying for it is it takes a minute to learn and a lifetime to master. Right. Well, that's pretty true. But what we do, or what I do, is kind of with that company and specifically, different companies do different things.
Right.
We did an onboarding and education on basically just how to sell on Amazon. So we went through fulfillment by Amazon versus merchant fulfilled, pay-per-click, search engine optimization, catalog optimization, all the different basic aspects of selling on Amazon. And so since then, they've wanted to focus on that channel, and it's turned out pretty well for them.
What do you think? What was the biggest challenge for them going on Amazon?
Well, I think for them and for brands in general, it's the mindset of selling direct. Typically, if your sales channel is through wholesalers and through retailers, you just don't have much experience with that direct-to-consumer model. And so that, I think, is one of the biggest hurdles that folks, that folks have to get over.
Yeah, is that an objection too? Like, what objections do they come? Because I could see them being resistant. They're used to selling through your typical channels, and then you're coming and saying, go direct to consumer and go on Amazon. What are some objections you get?
Sure. Well, they come to me just as a difference. But yeah, I mean, it's easy. It's easy for a brand to, fill one PO from one major company, and that's an easy process. That's what they're used to. Whereas if you do it and sell through Amazon, it's not that. It's basically the opposite.
Right.
You're tracking and monitoring hundreds, if not thousands, of sales.
Yeah.
So it's different, and it's different for every person and how they want to pursue, every brand and how they want to pursue that. But yeah, we are seeing some brands, take that step, and they're finding it very beneficial.
Yeah, I asked that because you were mentioning before about mindset, and it takes a little different mindset from what they're used to doing compared to what you're telling them. They should add into their repertoire as well. So, someone who's thinking about, like, someone may be listening to this and thinking about their brand should be doing that, but they're thinking of different objections. So I wasn't sure, is that like a no-brainer for them, or are they bringing up certain things that to you of sticking points?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the technical nature of selling on Amazon, and there is a significant cost associated with educating themselves as a manufacturer on doing it. And so what we found is that smaller brands would be more apt to selling directly on Amazon because just of how the company's set up, there's less folks, they can dedicate more time to it. In general, that's what we found. So the larger brands are not themselves trying to sell directly on Amazon.
Yeah, so I want you to tell this amazing story, but before I have you tell it, anything else, any other tips or advice on brands going on Amazon?
Well, I think I mentioned it earlier, just that, 5 years ago, or 2009, 19%. Did I say this earlier? I'm not sure if I.
You mean the searches wise, or?
Yeah. Well, in 2009, 19% of people started their product research on Amazon. So, 1 in 5 basically started educating themselves on Amazon. This year, 2015, that number's grown to 44%.
Right.
So there's been a pretty dynamic shift in the market to where people begin their product research. And I think brands just need to take notice of that and understand that that's a real, real number. And they're bypassing Google, they're bypassing Bing, they're bypassing manufacturers' sites, they're bypassing everyone. They're going right to Amazon. Yeah. So they just need to position themselves correctly for that, for that change.
Yeah, I guess the better question is there anyone who should not be selling on Amazon, who maybe it's not a good fit? Like if a brand came to you, you'd probably tell them, no, don't even bother with it.
Sure. I mean, probably your extremely large brands that are so integrated with Amazon retail, so basically selling directly to Amazon and letting them sell, they probably wouldn't find the value in it. So like a Nike or a Reebok or whatever, make up just a ginormous brand. They're so tightly integrated that it may not make sense for them to do that.
Yeah. So Wes, you have a crazy story, or a really amazing story, which kind of feeds back into the muscular dystrophy camps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's kind of proof that, if you want to call it spirituality or karma or whatever term you use, it's definitely real and in full effect. Like I said, I've been doing MDA camp for years now. About 5 years ago, one of my favorite MDA campers. It was her last year at camp.
They only do a certain age or something? They only let a certain
17.
age?
Yep.
Oh, 17. Okay.
Yep, 17. So yeah, 6 to 17 years old. So it would have been her last year at camp. The problem is the location of the camp changed, and it was 3 hours from her house. And so there was no way for anyone to get her wheelchair, her power wheelchair, which is 400 pounds, 500 pounds, from her house to the camp.
Wow.
So she would not have been able to have gone. So I said, all right, Katie, that's her name, I'll take your chair up there. So
you were going to rent a van or something, or what were you going to do?
Oh, I had a van. Being in the wheelchair, being in the wheelchair business, I had a van and I had a ramp. So that part of it was set. But you still had to drive 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I drove her. I drove her wheelchair up there, put it in the van, drove it up 3 hours, dropped it off at camp, and right around that same time, she was being dropped off, and her sister, Allie or Allison, drove her sister up. And so I met Allie. That was the first time I really met Allie and started talking to her. And we've been friends since then. We've been friends for years and officially started dating a couple years ago. So I call her the love of my life. So that's proof that if you try to be good and do good things, that you're rewarded for it. So I definitely feel rewarded.
That's amazing. Yeah, the last thing I would think is you're picking up a girl at a muscular dystrophy camp as a volunteer.
Right. Yeah, no, luckily, she was definitely not a volunteer, but she's a wonderful, wonderful, caring and kind woman. So I feel pretty lucky.
That's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Absolutely.
again.
Thank you.
Wes, now if people didn't love you more before, now they love you even more now. So I really appreciate it, and fantastic. Everyone, again,
Thanks.
Lullaby Lane, hesonomy.com.
Thanks, Jeremy.